There's another question here. Are we allowed to go with different madhabs in a single issue? Can we split madhabs in a given issue? Again, the opinion of, well, everybody's opinion is that just for the sake of leniency, just for the sake of ease, like, just regular ease, to go across a madhab is definitely, everybody agrees that it's not permissible. But then there's a difference of opinion as to when there's a genuine difficulty and you're not systematically looking for facilitations, because that's definitely a problem of your nafs. In that case, where there's a need for an individual to, for example, do jama of the prayer, there are many scholars who follow madhabs, big names, who consider it permissible in general. But then there's some requirements in that regard, where if you're going to go to the Shafi'i school for a while, then you have to take everything of that into consideration. So if you've touched your wife and then you want to do jama, you've got a problem. You have to do wudu. Because in Hanafi school it doesn't break, but now you're trying to take a Shafi'i opinion of combining the prayers. So if you touch your wife, you're going to have to repeat your wudu as well. So there's some stipulations of that nature. I'm just giving it to you in general.
I think the question probably, for example, if you think that the correct opinion about...
Yeah, if you, this about correct opinions and all that, that's only for a person who has encompassed the sciences and who's on a kind of a level of ijtihad in the madhab. Like Imam Tahawi, for example. For a person to say that I believe that it's more sahih to do this because I've seen a hadith which the Shafis do, but you're a Hanafi. Or if you're a Shafi, you think that the Hanafis are better on a position, that is not permissible according to anybody, because that's not your status unless you have ijtihad. Because you could be missing out on so many other hadith and texts that would suggest otherwise. You're basing yourself on just one hadith which you saw, and you're not looking at it in the light of all of the other hadiths which the Imams probably did take into consideration. So in that case, that is not permissible for that, unless you are, mashallah, an accomplished scholar, firmly grounded in the different sciences, and you have that ability to decipher and siphon through all of these things. Like you would find, Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani had differences with Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, but he had all right to do that. Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, had many differences from the Hanbali, many different, and probably he had the right to do that in fiqh, for sure. Right? We agree with his fiqh in the sense that he was an accomplished scholar in that regard. It's his aqidah which is the issue. What he wrote on aqidah actually, which is the issue. And in the Hanafi school you've got Imam Tahawi and other scholars who've gone against, like Shah Waliullah, Sheikh Abdul Hayy al-Laknawi. These were accomplished Hanafi scholars that decided to change in certain issues, but they have the right to do that. But their ijtihad to follow that other opinion is restricted to themselves. I can't follow that, because they're not the school. I have to follow the school as a muqallid. I can't follow their ijtihad unless it's taken by the overwhelming majority of scholars in the school that we will go with this for a reason. But that's why the Hanafi school is so versatile, because it has 2 or 3 opinions from the different scholars at the top, Abu Hanifa, Imam Muhammad, Imam Abu Yusuf already. One is a Zahir madhab, the other one is not. But we could sometimes change and give fatwa on Imam Abu Yusuf's opinion if the need calls for it. But that's if there's enough of a consensus on this. The ulama of the subcontinent, the muqallideen ulama, they really discourage this completely, because when you're giving that ability to the individual, then you're freeing them basically from restriction. So yes, there's going to be 10, 15, 20% of them who will use that discretion properly by saying, okay, this is a real time of need, so I need to take this. But many, it will be from their nafs, which they will justify as a need. Right? What is considered need? So that's the issue. So they say that this is saddan lil bab. It's not like a mansus. It's not something that's necessarily legislated upon by the Sharia that you can't follow, and it's absolutely haram. But they do this to stop the fitnah and corruption that could prevail in the giving permissibility of jumping over madhab lines, right, once in a while. Because not everybody's going to use it properly. In fact, nowadays what they say is that there's so much corruption and evil intent and problems and the weakness of the soul that the majority would probably corrupt it. Right? So that's mentioned, that's the position I took in the Fiqh al-Imam in the first chapter on taqleed. So basically that's where that comes from. They might, in fact, to just take the Maliki opinion of allowing a woman just to wait for 4 years before she is considered to be like out of wedlock if her husband disappears and there's no information about him. The Hanafi opinion is 80 something years or until all of his contemporaries die. Now by that time she's not going to need to be married again, right? So basically they said this is happening quite frequently. Let's take the Maliki opinion, which is 4 years. Now that took Mawlana Shaykh Thanwi, wrote these major treatises on this subject. He published it as Al-Hilatul Najiza, had numerous mushawarat, consultation with scholars. Even in Egypt he consulted Zahid al-Kawthari and others on that regard, and then eventually that was published. So they do this very carefully because otherwise you're just going to get a mixture, right? You're going to get a mixture. They're very careful about doing this, just for that reason. So to jump over to another school, it has to be an absolutely necessary, it has to be a necessity of a higher degree, which is encompassing, which is like a prevalent issue for people that they have to deal with, and then a number of scholars have to kind of go on that. So that's their opinion. Yeah.
For example, somebody says I'm Shafi, but somebody that they trust as a scholar, and he says, well, although you are Shafi, but the correct opinion on following the sighting of the moon is that you should go with global sighting. So he said, well, since that's the person that I follow, can I, although I pray Shafi way?
No, the Shafi should just go with the Shafi opinion. Whatever the Shafi opinion, it's not about the scholar you follow. That's if the moon issue, the global issue, global sighting, away from the American context of it, okay? I don't want to bring the American issue into it, right? The North American issue. Just talking in general about the global sighting and local sighting. Shafis go with local sighting, but they need to go with that local sighting unless they've got something else that would overwhelm that, which is like the area that they stay in. For example, an Eid prayer. But again, you're asking about a Shafi issue, which I'm not qualified to answer, so I can tell you what that would be in the Hanafi school. In Hanafi schools we have both opinions in this regard, so there is some leeway in that regard. So about jumping over, its best thing is to abstain because of the possibility, unless there's an absolute need where you consult a scholar and see what you can make mashwara on in that regard. It also depends on the issue as well.